So this short video is going to cover building the DKM FX transmitter and receiver system. We offer the 2, 4, and 6 port chassis. We'll be working with the 4 port today. So what you're going to want to do is when you have your cards and you have your chassis, remove the screws to remove the top lid. There's a screw here, screws on the side. It's actually going to be dependent on the model that you currently have. Once the top is removed, you'll see that we have a power supply located on the one side of the chassis, and you're going to have power jumpers coming from the power supply, which are going to plug into the cards that you're going to install. These power connectors are going to plug into the cards that have the brown power interface. You'll see they plug directly in and they fit. And most of the interface cards, actually all of the interface cards that have a CADX output or a fiber SFP will have a power in. You'll see that there are 2 connectors. That's just going to allow you to plug in the input power, and then you can also use the secondary power connector for an auxiliary output if you need more power cables or power conductors. So with this chassis, you'll see we by default have 3 power cables, but if we install 4 interface cards, we're going to need this additional power connection to power the 4th card. So with that being said, we're going to put this chassis together. So what you're going to want to do is, I'd recommend installing the cards very carefully. You want to line it up on the back. You'll see there's little teeth back here, little ledges that you can plug the card into to hold it in place. And the LED located here is going to stick out the front. And once you get it lined up, which is sometimes tricky, there we go. I'd recommend putting a placeholder screw in just so it doesn't fall out while you're installing the other cards. Now be very careful when installing or screwing in the hardware, as if you screw it in too tightly, you're going to strip the chassis threads. And this is actually easier if you stand it up like so. So just turn it until it gets taut, and then that's good enough. Alright, so we have our first card installed. What we're going to want to do is install a few more cards, and you'll see how these get put together. On this chassis, we're actually going to build a dual head receiver with audio, RS-232, and USB 2.0. So with that type of configuration, we have our first card for primary video, we'll have our second card for the secondary video, and our third card, which supports the audio, USB 2.0, and serial, which is going to stack on the secondary card. Now this is referenced as a daughter card, and the daughter card, you'll see, does not have a copper connector nor a fiber SFP connector that would lead back to the DKM FX. So in this case, you'll see that the daughter cards will have jumpers on the bottom, or headers. These headers are going to plug directly into an interface card that supports it. You'll see on this interface card, so you can see the pins on that, we have a connection point here and we have a connection point here. So when you install the daughter card, you'll see that they bind together quite nicely. We're going to be using both of these connections, one for the audio and RS-232, the other one is for the USB 2.0. So let's we can line these connectors up. Looks like this one's not straight, but we can make it straight. Alright, so now that we made a connection, you can push these together. Make sure that pushed in all the way, which they are. And what that's going to allow us to do is any of the audio feed is going to be pumped in through the main card, pushed up through this one header. Any data for the USB 2.0 is going to be pumped into the main card and then pumped up through this header. So now that we have this daughter card installed, you'll see that the audio card does not have a power connection, but the USB side does. And this power input is located here. Now you'll see that the base card has two power connections inside, which, I put the daughter card on. Could have been easier if I just installed that power cable first. So it's as easy as just disconnecting these two cards, and I'm going to power up the base card first. That way I'm not trying to get my fingers in there. I can do that just by taking the power chassis, the power conductor on the chassis, plugging it in, and I'm going to add the daughter card. Make sure the headers are lined up. Okay. So it looks good. We still need to power the USB 2.0 receiver card. Before we power it up, let's install both of these cards together. If you're installing two cards at a time because you have maybe a daughter card on top of an interface card, it's easier to install if you connect both cards first and then push it in. If you try to add this daughter card after you install the base card, it gets to be a little bit more difficult because you have these shelves on the back that the card fits into. Alright, so it looks like we have made a connection, bottom card seated, top daughter card seated, and now we can run power to it. You'll see in this setup that I'm powering up my primary video card. Still need power for this interface, however, cable doesn't go all the way over. So in this scenario, as an example, I'm going to show you can either kind of stretch this out by releasing it from here, or take a power cable and jump it from the main card over to the daughter card. And now we have a powered USB 2.0 receiver. With this being said, the daughter card is best installed if you put it onto an interface card straight down because it has those headers. If you're not so lucky to have that type of setup, let's just say for some odd reason you have this daughter card installed maybe over here, but you don't have an interface card, or the daughter card's by itself, there is an option for a data jumper cable that you can use to plug into the data connection and link it over to one of the peripheral data points for the daughter card. This way it is linked to an interface card and the data will get sent back to the main DKM FX switch. So with this setup, we are done. What I recommend is let's put some screws in here just to hold the cards in place. My recommendation is to always power up the chassis to make sure the cards are in fact getting power and no mistakes are made, or you don't have a bad power supply or a bad conductor. Once again, when putting the screws in, be very cautious not to make it too tight, or it will strip the threads, and it's very difficult to fix that problem. The last item for this chassis is to fill any open blanking holes with the blanking panels. So we have a blanking panel here. This can be installed at this location. We'll screw it in, and we have ourselves the first built receiver.